you see kids that are obviously gay and they think nothing about coming out and saying they're gay. So there is a huge difference. Again, I was lucky where I grew up. Even there, you could still run into some things that you would see or hear about. It just wasn't as bad as, say, in Dallas or a lot of other places.
How did your peers react to the civil rights movement going on around them?
Well, basically when all that was happening, I was junior high and high school. And I think everyone was a little, for where I grew up, again, South Central Texas, there's a little doubt, is it really necessary, you know? And then, of course, you see all the things on TV. You see governor of, was it Alabama? I forget his name. And what happened in Little Rock, Arkansas, and everything.
With the Little Rock Nine?
Yeah. And you hear things like that, and I think people reacted in part that, well, that's there, that's not here. And of course, looking back, I can see it was there, just not as bad as it was in some places. So I think it was a more confusion for us at that time, because, you know, like I said, we were still pretty young. And it'd be like high school students today really being aware of, probably more aware of what we were back then, but still rather ignorant about a lot of things. Martin Luther King, we heard about him a lot, and then you heard about, you know, the Black Panthers and everything, and I think those that I hung out with may get a little bit confused about that. You have Martin Luther King advocating peace, and then you have others advocating violence, and you know, there's a little fear that comes in, you know. So, but exactly how we felt, confused as much as anything, I think, at the time.
So, did you think that change was needed at that time?
Oh boy. Based on things I've heard that come from other parts of the country, yes. They obviously needed change. You know, we didn't, you know, because we were much more intelligent or whatnot. And like I just mentioned, I think part of that was ignorance. We didn't see a lot of the things that were obvious in places. And even though you knew there were segregated neighborhoods, I think at the time I was just too young and ignorant to realize that people lived in areas because some cases, that's where they were allowed to live. I think you just kind of assume, which happens today, people live close to people that they know and they're familiar with. You know, people tend to segregate themselves even today. There's a tendency for Jewish people to want to live around Jewish people. Immigrants from Vietnam want to live around people from Vietnam. And so even today you have a certain amount of that. People who want to be off on their own, but people like them. People still segregate themselves just automatically.
How did your family and loved ones feel about the civil rights movement?
I can tell you that I have no idea. My father died when I was 16, my mother died when I was 6, so their feelings about the matter, I had no clue. Like I said, from my father, when he was alive, I never had anything, never heard a negative word from him about anyone, well, about anyone. So, making an assumption, which is all I can do, is I would assume that he would approve of Other relatives, aunts and uncles, I don't know what they thought. I'm sure you had a wide mixture of peoples and wide mixture of beliefs between them. Some who probably opposed it, some probably were in favor of it. But that's assumptions.
How did your community view the Freedom Riders?
I had never heard about them until last couple of decades, I guess. The Freedom Riders were unknown to me. I think they came out with a movie, The Freedom Riders. I think that's really the first I'd ever heard of them. Now the Freedom Riders, the ones that came out of the north, buses and everything, them we heard about. But the riders, I'm assuming that's the riding sort of, I had never heard of them.
Okay. What events went on during the Civil Rights Movement went unreported on by the media? Do you know?
No, I mean, I'm sure there were thousands and thousands of good things and bad things that occurred that never hit the media, that I was never aware of. Just because I think in the 60s and early 70s in particular, late 50s, there's just so much going on. I think media, especially at that time, hit the high points, and a lot of the other stuff just kind of went by the way. Part of it is the fact that we had 3 TV stations. You didn't have cell phones, you didn't have computers, so you had TV and radio and newspaper, and I didn't read the newspaper back then, didn't even care much for the news. So there was a lot of things I was just kind of ignorant about, and but I'm sure there's a huge amount of stuff that no one was told about. I think I talked to y'all about Till. What's his name?
Me too.
Emmett Till. I mean, he was something I didn't hear about until I was an adult, and yet that was such a horrible thing to have happened. It's still, I still talk to my classes about it now, just because it was, I mean, it's such a horrible thing to do to a young person, for really not doing anything. Anyway, I digress, I know.
Was
It's about to die.
oh, it is.
Yeah. Do you want me to finish on my phone?
Do you have a charger for?
iPhone?
Yes, sir.